My name is Wanda Playter. I am an administrative associate at, can we start again?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
We live in a microcosmic universe of stories. It begins with the unfathomable tale of the stars and heavens, the grand narrative of the human species, the introspection of artists across millennia, the records of the American nation, and the city of Northfield. Finally leaving us with our own biographies, all of which can be told with such splendor that an audience of our peers and strangers alike can be enthralled. Today, I am delighted to share one of those stories with you. I'm Sam Temple. When I began working for the city of Northfield, I wanted to get to know my coworkers and the people we serve. I decided to turn my own personal introduction into an introduction for the general public. Here, Northfield Public Broadcasting presents a sampling of Northfield's civil servants and the public they serve. This series will share the stories of our neighbors in Northfield. But what to title such a series? Well, we took inspiration from our town founder, John North, who wrote of the Cannon River Valley, quote, "No portion of the country, east or west, can boast a more intelligent or enterprising people than the scattering inhabitants of this valley." I interviewed Wanda in January of 2020. We began by tracing her earliest memories, which brought us to the familiar scene of a family farm.
I've always been a morning person, and so I remember waking up early on Saturday mornings. That's back when cartoons only happened on Saturday mornings. And I also remember waking up early when we would be visiting my grandparents in South Dakota and loving that time on the farm when I went downstairs and had that time with just Grandma in the kitchen because everyone else was sleeping and she was up making breakfast, and Grandpa was out doing chores, and he would come in and I would be there, and my siblings and everyone else was still in bed. And yeah, so I loved that time.
Wanda's parents came from the same hometown in South Dakota, reconnecting after graduating high school. As a young man, Wanda's father enlisted in the military and served domestically.
My mom's pretty outspoken, and I think I probably get that from her as well. Yeah. So his family was all from South Dakota, but he and his parents moved to Wisconsin when he was younger. So he was living in Wisconsin, she was in South Dakota.
Wanda Playter was born in Yankton, South Dakota, later joined by 3 younger sisters. Throughout her adolescence, Wanda was actively involved in athletics. Among her other extracurricular activities, she desperately wanted to nurture livestock for 4-H. However, living in town, she had to settle for less messy trials, like home economics and pet rabbits.
I played French horn, he played trumpet. Yes, neither one of us were very good. We were in band together and study hall, and so I was helping him write some papers that he said he needed help with, which he probably didn't need help with. But
Wanda and Mike have been married for more than 35 years. They met at 16 and married at 20, and it all started with a sock.
And it was a nice restaurant. It was Labor Day weekend, and so we went to dinner, and I had no idea. And he had the ring in his sock. He had the box in his sock and had it hidden there. We had dinner, the whole thing. I got up to use the restroom, and when I came back, their box was on my plate.
After high school, Wanda attended beauty school and worked in a salon. Eventually, she and Mike purchased their first home in Clinton, Wisconsin.
In our kitchen, we decided that we would put a cupboard in this one spot. There was some scalloping under it. So my husband went to an auction at the fairgrounds and he bought this great cupboard. Brought it home, we put it in the house. It was too tall. It wouldn't fit under the scallops. So no worries, it's a 2-day sale. So he went back to the auction the next day. We measured how high we had. And so he bought a cupboard that fit under the scallops, but it was too wide. When the door opened, it hit the cupboard. So here we have 2 cupboards, so what are we gonna do? So we sold them. At that time, everyone wanted brown furniture, So furniture that was refinished, the wood furniture. So we would buy pieces that were painted, and during the week I would strip them and refinish them and put a coat of varnish on them, and they would be beautiful. And then we would go to a show, and then we would sell those pieces.
It soon came about that Wanda could no longer man the toxic chemicals and antiquing varnishes, and for good reason. There was another dream of theirs to pursue.
I always wanted to be a mom more than anything, and it took us 2 years to get pregnant with our first child, and so that was awful. And anyone that hasn't experienced that, it was the hardest thing. And so when we finally were pregnant and then had a healthy baby boy, we were just thrilled. So the world really did revolve around him. Yeah. If we would have had any of our children at home, I wouldn't have lived through it, and my kids wouldn't have lived through it. So our first son, we really enjoy sports. And so I played basketball, and so we follow basketball. And our little town in Clinton, Wisconsin was in the playoffs in tournament on their way to state, and they were one game away from state. And so they were playing, I think, 3 hours away. And so we went to that because we followed them and we went to all their games. And so we went with my parents and my aunt and uncle and my husband and I, and we rode in the back of their conversion van at the time they had. We were in there not thinking anything of it, and I went into labor that night after, I think, bouncing all the way up there and back. He was born under stress, and so I ended up with an emergency C-section.
During our conversation, Wanda was passionate about breaking the stigma surrounding difficult childbirth experiences. As she will tell you, nothing about childbirth is straightforward or easy, as illustrated by her experience with her sons.
He came very fast. He was a VBAC birth, and he came out with the cord around his neck. Yeah, so he was blue. Our first one was green because the McCormick stain, and then the second one was blue.
As Wanda will tell you, her youngest, Hannah, was born on a holy day for the state of Wisconsin.
It was a Packer game, and so in Wisconsin, when there's a Packer game, the entire state shuts down, and everyone's wearing green and gold. And so that's how we spent the day. Her birth, the doctor, my OB doctor, he came in, it was his birthday, it was his 40th birthday. And so when he came to the hospital to deliver Hannah, so they share a birthday, there were balloons in the room, and they were all celebrating his birthday. And then, yeah, he was able to deliver Hannah.
Today, her son Seth has returned to the familiar scenery of a family farm in South Dakota.
He did sports and played basketball and football, but his real passion was showing livestock. He loved animals, and we moved to the country when he was 7, and I remember him coming into the house and saying, "Mom, today all of my dreams came true," when he's 7, and we had bought this dilapidated dairy farm. The barn, we didn't restore it because it was too far gone, but to him, this was his dream. When he walked into a barn, he was a different kid. You could just tell he just had this confidence about him, and he was able to do great things. He wanted to show livestock, and so he wanted to show a steer, and we said, Dad and I grew up in town. We really don't know a lot about raising livestock. Maybe we should start with something a little smaller. And so we went to a farm, to a treaty sale, and bought 2 sheep, 2 lambs. And so he raised these 2 lambs, and one had a kidney stone and ended up dying, which was traumatic. It was awful. The other one did, I think he got a white ribbon at the fair. He raised this lamb and did well. And from that, because he loved it so much, he went to every clinic, every class, every meeting he could get to because he wanted to learn more about it. And because my husband and I didn't know, a lot of kids, their parents would say, they'd get him this livestock and they would show it, but we didn't know. So he had to learn it, and he did. And so he was 12, And you start showing at 9, so he's 12, so he hasn't done it a whole lot of years. He went out to a farm and just to a lot, and the owner there, was a young guy, and he said, "Okay, Seth, tell me what you're looking for." And so he sorted through the sheep, and we always said we didn't buy our kids a blue ribbon. We'd only spend so much money. And they sorted through, and Seth said, "I like this one." And so then they had a pen of the sheep that Seth picked out. And then he said, "Okay, not this one is too much money." They'd throw that one back in the pen, and they sorted it down. And what do you like about this and that? And so he had this lamb, and he ended up reserve grand champion at the Wisconsin State Fair with that lamb. So that was pretty neat.
Ben lives and works a little closer to home, in Northfield. Having grown up with speech challenges, Wanda is especially proud of the strong public speaker Ben has grown into, even if some of the stuff he speaks of is a little inaccessible.
Went to school in Iowa, and so they had a great speech program. And so he was in speech, and he went to state and got many awards with speaking. In high school, he had and I don't understand. I'm not the math person. My husband is. I'm the English person. So when the kids need help, I do the English. He does the math. But he came up with a theory about imaginary numbers, and I don't understand it all. So he has this theory out there of how to solve imaginary numbers. So he was a math major at Iowa State. And then after he got his undergrad there, he went over to England and got his master's.
Finally, her daughter Hannah works in Arizona after being a pivotal player in getting the Playters to settle down in Northfield.
We were in Wisconsin, and then he took a position in Iowa and worked for a company there, Cummins Diesel, and they made air filters there. And oil filters, they made filters there. They moved their company to Mexico, and so we didn't want to go to Mexico. And so he started looking for a new job, and he took a job at Daikin in Faribault, and so he is their production manager there. And so he's doing that. And so when we moved, Hannah was starting her freshman year of high school, and so he let her and I decide where we wanted to live. And so he said within a 20-mile radius, anywhere from Daikin, we were driving. And once we drove to Northfield, we said, okay, this is where we need to be. We knew.
Wanda credits Hannah's newfound public speaking confidence to her daughter's hard work and the support of Northfield Public Schools. Another subject that has been intrinsic to Wanda's life has been religion. Faith is incredibly important to Wanda. Churches across South Dakota, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Minnesota have provided community and nurtured Wanda's confidence in her own expressions of faith. Eventually, this manifested in Wanda becoming a published author. When her book was released in 2015, she revisited those church communities across the Midwest that shaped her life.
Taught me a lot more than had I just stayed in one denomination, I think. When we moved to Iowa, too, it was the first time we'd been away from family. And so the church really became our family and became my family. And there were people there that really pushed my faith. I wasn't a big speaker. I don't know if I would have written my book had I not moved and had to take that step. I wrote and published a book, Walking in the Word, a daily journey through the New Testament. So I picked it up the same weekend that our daughter, our youngest, graduated from high school. And note to self, that's too much for one weekend. It was a lot, but it really worked out perfect because then all of our kids were home, all of my family came home. So I drove up, picked up my book, and was driving back. And I have my husband's truck and this whole truckload of books in the back. And I'm driving, and I look over and I see author Wanda Playter on the box, and it just hit me. And so I had to pull over because I was crying too hard to drive. And so, yeah.
Now we turn to Wanda's career as a civil servant. She has been working for the city of Northfield for 7 years. In the street shop, she serves the community and supports the guys of the Public Works Department.
The most enjoyable is helping the people of Northfield, being able to have value, to help the guys, but then also to help people. So I reserve all of the park shelters in town and helping people with that. And I'll get calls and people aren't sure, which park do you think? You know, I'm having this family reunion. What do you think about this? And so I help them sort through that. Just yesterday, I had a call from a lady and she said, I'm not sure if this is the number I should call. I get several calls like that, but we are going away this winter, she said, and I don't know what temperature to leave my house. And I said, okay, this is a street shop. Okay, just a second. And so my boss in the next office is also a firefighter. I said, hey, Tim, what do you think? What should I tell this lady? He said, tell her 55. Okay, perfect. I go back, I said, how about 55? If you leave your house at 55. Okay, she said. I said, are you gonna have people checking on it? Yes, I'm gonna have, she said, actually, we're just moving across town into a townhome, so we'll be checking on it some. I said, okay, that's perfect. And we went through the water, we went through garbage pickup, we went through snow removal, how that was gonna look, and went through the whole thing. And when we got off the phone, she was just so thankful. And she just needed someone to talk through those things. And it was nice to be able to be that person that was able to help her with those.
Wanda knows community. She has been part of many towns, many denominations, many teams. In Northfield, she has found a home for her faith, her family, and her passion for helping neighbors. The overwhelming feeling that still lingers after our conversation all those months ago is how proud Wanda Playter is to be among the enterprising people of Northfield.